They said it was just a conference, a gathering of nations to rebuild the world after war. But what if that meeting wasn't about peace? It was about control. What if, in a quiet New England hotel, a handful of men didn't just rebuild the world economy, they rewired it for good? This is the story of how a secret meeting in 1944 decided who would rule global money, and why, 80 years later, we're still living under its shadow. The year is 1944. Europe lies in ruins, cities reduced to rubble, industries destroyed, millions displaced. But behind the front lines, another kind of war is being fought, a financial one. The United States has emerged as the world's creditor. While London smolders and Berlin burns, America's factories are booming. Gold flows across the Atlantic. But there's a problem. If America controls all the gold, how can global trade recover? If currencies are destroyed, who sets the new rules? Someone needs to design a new system, one that looks fair, but keeps control where the gold already is. And so, in July 1944, the world's most powerful nations send their top economists and diplomats to a secluded resort in the small mountain town of Bretton Woods, New Hampshire. On paper, 730 delegates from 44 nations have come together to plan post-war recovery. In reality, only two men matter. One is John Maynard Keynes, the British economist, brilliant, outspoken, representing an empire on the brink of bankruptcy. The other is Harry Dexter White, an American Treasury official, quiet, calculating, representing the country that now owns the world's gold. They meet in a place called the Mount Washington Hotel, a grand, isolated building surrounded by forests and guarded by soldiers. For 3 weeks behind closed doors, they debate not just currency policy, but the architecture of global power. Keynes wants a balanced system, a neutral international currency called the Bancor. It would prevent any one nation from dominating global trade. He wants a system built around the US dollar, backed by gold, making America the anchor of the global economy. The logic is simple. If every country pegs its currency to the dollar, and the dollar is pegged to gold, the US effectively becomes the world's banker. And that's exactly what happens. When the conference ends, two institutions are born: the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the World Bank. Their official mission: to stabilize exchange rates and rebuild war-torn economies. Their unofficial result: to place the United States at the center of global finance. Every nation agrees to fix its currency to the dollar. It sounds stable, it sounds fair, but there's a catch. Only America can print the world's reserve currency. In one stroke, the US transforms its wartime gold hoard into political power. It doesn't need to conquer territory. It just needs to issue dollars. At first, it works beautifully. Europe rebuilds under the Marshall Plan. Japan industrializes at lightning speed. Trade expands, consumerism explodes, and the middle class is born. But beneath the prosperity lies a structural flaw, a paradox. The very success of the Bretton Woods system depends on the US exporting dollars to the world. But the more dollars it sends abroad, the less gold it has to back them, and the more other nations start to doubt whether the dollar is truly as good as gold. By the late 1950s, cracks begin to appear. Europe's economies recover. Germany and Japan rise as new industrial powers. The US starts running trade deficits. Gold reserves begin to drain, and foreign governments, led by France under Charles de Gaulle, start to call America's bluff. De Gaulle demands physical gold in exchange for dollars, accusing the US of exporting inflation to the rest of the world. One by one, ships begin crossing the Atlantic, loaded not with goods but with gold. The French Navy literally sails to New York to retrieve its reserves. By 1971, the math no longer works. The world is demanding redemption, and the system is collapsing. Then comes the second secret meeting, this time not in New Hampshire but in the Oval Office, August 15, 1971. In a televised address, he announces that the U.S. will temporarily suspend the convertibility of dollars into gold. The Bretton Woods system, the global financial architecture, born from that secret meeting in 1944, dies in a single sentence. Money is no longer backed by metal, but by trust. The dollar becomes pure fiat, value by decree, not by substance. And yet, instead of collapsing, the system mutates. Because while gold once anchored the world's currencies, the U.S. military, the oil market, and global debt now become the new anchors. Through a deal with Saudi Arabia in the 1970s, the dollar becomes the only currency accepted for oil, birthing the petrodollar system. In essence, the world still needs dollars, not to buy gold, but to buy energy. The wiring of the world's economy remains intact. Only the circuitry changes. Where gold once enforced discipline, debt now fuels expansion. An explosion of credit, consumption, and inequality. Global GDP soars, but so does global debt. The financial system transforms from a balance sheet into a pyramid, built not on assets but on promises. Banks, now free from the restraint of gold, create money through lending. Governments finance deficits through printing. And the new engine of the economy becomes inflation, slow, invisible, and cumulative. The 1980s bring deregulation, the 1990s bring globalization, the 2000s bring financialization. Each decade adds another layer of complexity. Derivatives, shadow banking, digital markets. The structure of Bretton Woods is long gone, but its DNA remains in every transaction. The dollar is no longer as good as gold. It's better, because it's infinite. But infinite systems don't last forever. As debts mount and trust erodes, nations begin to seek alternatives. China builds its own payment systems. Russia hoards gold. Saudi Arabia flirts with trading oil in yuan. And central banks worldwide start accumulating gold again, the very asset the system was designed to escape. It's as if history is trying to correct itself. So what really happened at Bretton Woods? Was it a vision of cooperation or a quiet coup dressed in diplomacy? The U.S. entered the conference as a partner and left it as a ruler. Keynes's dream of a balanced world currency was buried under White's blueprint for dollar dominance. And for 80 years, that dominance has defined geopolitics, trade, and even war. Every crisis, from 1971 to 2008 to today's inflation spiral, can trace its roots back to that one hotel in New Hampshire. Because when you control the world's money, you don't need to control its armies. Today we stand at another turning point. Digital currencies, de-dollarization, and geopolitical fractures are reshaping the landscape once again. Nations are questioning whether a system built in 1944 can survive a world that runs on algorithms and instant capital flows. And just like before, a new meeting is already happening, behind closed doors, in boardrooms and policy summits, away from public view. The next rewiring of the world's economy won't happen with tanks or treaties, but with code, networks, and data. So what are the lessons of Bretton Woods? First, every temporary system becomes permanent when it benefits those in power. The dollar-gold link was supposed to be a stabilizer. It became a weapon. Second, control rarely looks like control. When the world pegs its money to yours, you don't need to invade. You just need to print. Third, trust is the new gold. The moment people lose faith in paper, in banks, or in governments, the system unravels fast. The secret meeting that rewired the world's economy didn't end in 1944. It simply moved online into markets, institutions, and balance sheets. And the people rewriting those rules today, they're not elected, and they don't answer to borders. Because power isn't about owning gold anymore. It's about controlling what replaces it. If this story made you see money and power differently, you already understand what most never question. History doesn't repeat. But when the same hands keep rewriting the code of the world's economy, you can be sure of one thing. They'll always make sure it runs in their favor.